Hello again, welcome back. Today I'm going to be making a Wolverine mask, and the funny thing is, as soon as I made one, I immediately wanted to make another one. I want to make a duplicate and paint it with yellow and brown, and then next I'm going to alter and change the pattern somewhat, and I want to do an X-Force version with the red eyes. I think that'd be really cool. And there's been a lot of requests for this one, so hopefully y'all enjoy. And without me yammering anymore, just go ahead and get right into the video. Alright, so first I cut out all my pattern pieces, one nose piece, and then two of number 1, two number 2s, two number 3s, and two faces. And I put on my registration marks. However, before I start using the contact cement to glue anything together, I'm actually going to do some pre-heat forming on this. And the specific things I'm going to do is heat the number 1 pieces and curve them somewhat, like this, before gluing them together, so it'll be a little bit easier to glue them together. I won't have to worry about them pulling apart as much from the contact cement. And the number 2 as well. The other thing is I have these slits here to isolate the brow area. I'm going to heat that and try to put some curvature into it to look like a brow furrow. And I'm also going to heat this area here and curve it so that it looks like a nostril. And to show you a quick example before I do the rest off camera, applying some heat to get it pliable. And then just using my hands, I can begin to work a curve into it. Okay, so I've done all the heat forming to help put a curve in these pieces. And also the number 2. And then on the number 3 over here, I just heated and curved the backside a little bit. And next what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some contact cement. And I'm going to use that to glue the V-cuts together, like here on the eyebrow that I just heated and shaped, and here on the nostril that I just heated and shaped, and also on the number 3 piece and the ones on the number 2. And if you haven't used contact cement before, of course read the directions and precautions, but how it works is you brush a little bit of it on to each side that you're going to glue. Once you get it brushed on there, here I've already brushed it on here, you can see it's kind of shiny. Once you brush it on there, you wait 15 to 20 minutes. And once you've waited 15 to 20 minutes, feel it just to make sure that it's not too sticky. And once it's not very sticky, you just press both sides together. But make sure that you get them even, because if they're off a little bit, you're kind of stuck with it. You can't reposition it. It's one and done. Alright, now that I have my V-cuts all contact cemented together, I'm going to go ahead and apply contact cement to the edges here on the number 1 pieces, and then on both sides of the number 2, and on the side with the registration marks on the number 3s. I'm going to glue 1 to 2 to 3 on both sides. Alright, I have the 1, 2, and 3 glued together here, matched up my registration marks, got everything as even as possible, and you can see now probably why I did the preheat forming. Already makes it pretty round right off the bat. Now next, I'm going to take the face pattern here. You'll notice up top here on the brow there's 4 registration marks, but on the 1 and 2 patterns it only adds up to 3. This 4th one down here is just to show you where to stop the glue, because we're going to line up the corner here and then match up the registration marks, and you're going to glue it up to this line here, which represents this corner here. The other place you're going to apply contact cement is down here on the bottom, and that's what this other registration mark is for, so you can line this up. But the actual back here and this whole piece here, we're not going to glue just yet. We're really going to glue it on the brow and the bottom here on both sides. Okay, I now have both sides here glued on. And I'm going to go ahead and put contact cement now down through the center here. And I'm going to glue both sides together. And the actual nose piece is going to be last. Alright, so I have both sides here glued together. And the only other piece really for me to put in is, of course, the nose piece. And this center registration mark, of course, matches up with the center of the cowl itself. Now, if you were wondering as to why these weren't attached, the main reason is it'll be much easier to have these surfaces I can keep separated while I glue in the top part, and then match up and glue in each opposing side. Okay, now it is all put together. And like I said, it has a basic shape, but next I need to start heating this and shaping out the facial features the rest of the way, and rounding the top out a bit and doing some other stuff with my heat gun to help give it its final shape, like, you know, work some ears into the sides and things like that. Okay, so I've been using my heat gun to target and shape some specific areas. I'm going to go through and show you what those are instead of trying to just have a time lapse. It doesn't make any sense. So I heated this area and pushed it in a little bit. Then I heated this area from the inside and pushed it out, and then heated on the inside and pushed it out. That's to give it a bit of a brow ridge here so it doesn't look so flat. Okay, next thing, I heated and shaped the nose. I angled it here and I pushed it in, and heated around the eyes and pushed in the eyes as well. And then I pulled out and heated the brow up in here. I started from the inside and used my fingers to push it out while pushing on the top from my other hand, and then heated the outside and shaped that out. And then I heated and put in the cheek area here while pressing in beside the nostril so you have a nice nose shape overall. And then heated and pressed this in here where you kind of have crow's feet and your temple area, if that makes sense. And the rest of the heat forming I'm going to do to this is just to help get this round the rest of the way. And I usually use something round to do that also, like a hat maker's mannequin head, for example, which is just a canvas mannequin head that is used by hat makers. Or you can use anything that's solid and round, even a softball. It's not quite as big as you want, but you can roll it back and forth as you're heating and rounding all this out just to give you a nice even shape. And then as far as the rest of the definition, I'll put a little curvature probably into this area here and down in through here. And I'm also going to, even though you probably won't see it, I'm still going to push out like an ear area. And you will see this area is I'm going to mold in kind of a jaw shape too on either side of this bottom here. Alright, so I finished with my heat forming. I got this rounded out and even, well, as much as I humanly can. And I went through and put an ear indentation in and heated and shaped in the jaw, and then took it in a little bit right there. And that's pretty much it for that. The heating on the ears, if you want to call them that, the flares, I don't know. I just took the heat gun and went over it briefly, and that caused it to naturally curve. I didn't heat it from the back, just from the front, and I did that on both sides, and it came out very even. So from there, what I did was I took my original face pattern, and I cut out an additional section for each side here, so that it's now doubled up. This is going to cause a bit more work in sanding, but it does make it more sturdy. Okay. Now, finally getting back to gluing these pieces on and why I didn't do it. The reason why is I needed to shape everything, if that's not obvious enough at this point, and get everything the way I wanted it, which is going to overall change the shape of this. So once everything was in place and I had these extra pieces put here on the back, I went ahead and just used some super glue and just glued this together from the inside. And that's pretty much that. Okay, from here I'm going to move on to sanding this, and to sand this I'm going to use my Dremel rotary tool. Alright, I've done all the sanding, included rounding out these edges here, and some of the stuff I didn't do in that time lapse was round out these edges here on the outside and angle the inner pieces in, and then heated them and shaped them up and matched them up as evenly as I could. And yeah, next, after that, you'll notice some lines and cuts in here. I took my X-Acto knife and put some cuts in here for some crow's feet wrinkles, and some here across the nose, and a couple more into the brow. Now I'm going to move on to siliconing and covering some of the seams. Some of the seams I am going to leave, but like this one here and all the V-cuts I want to get rid of. The other three I'm going to keep. Okay, so how I cover the seams, which I think this is kind of an optional step. If you sand well enough and all of that, it's not such a big deal. I just like to do it. I'm going to use DAP All-Purpose Acrylic Latex Caulk plus Silicone. This is the clear. Now, whenever I squirted it out into this Tupperware, I always make sure to have some plastic wrap to put on top of it. Even though there's a lid, it can still dry out on the top layer due to the dead space in between the top of this and the lid. So there is a fast dry version of this. This is not the fast dry version. The fast dry version you can sand, but I prefer this stuff once I got used to working with it. And what I do is I get some on my finger, and then wherever I want to apply it, for example into this seam right here, I just kind of massage and work it in to make sure that it gets down inside of it. I'm going to try to even out any of the excess. I'll wipe the excess off on a towel. And then I have a container, just tap water. It just looks red because there was red paint in it and it's stained, but just tap water. And then I wet my finger, and just like you would with a clay project in a school art class, or maybe you're a sculptor, I don't know, you take your wet finger and just smooth it out. Then I just let that dry. Now keep in mind, as it said, it is acrylic latex caulk plus silicone. So since it's acrylic, it's water-based, which is why you can smooth it out with water. Also, and however, whenever it dries, it has a tendency to shrink as the water evaporates. So keep that in mind. I usually have to do several thin layers like that, sometimes up to 3 or even 4 times, to get it nice and level and even so that you don't see it. But I feel like it's worth it, but that's just me. Okay, so I'm going through right now, I'm putting my final layer of the silicone on. Now, if you'll notice, this is no longer totally black, it's somewhat gray. I sprayed it with a little bit of this vinyl and fabric dye. It's a flexible finish. What that means is, essentially, it absorbs into the foam and it dyes it. You don't need to do this. I just do this to check my work, since this stuff is clear. And sometimes there will be, like, for example, here there was a deeper indentation that I wanted, but it was kind of hard for me to tell because, once again, the stuff dries relatively clear. So yeah, I had to go through and essentially double check by dyeing it a different color. It's not necessary to do that, but if I just said, oh, da 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 da, then it's not going to make much sense if I don't go through and actually explain it. But I wouldn't use actual spray paint to check your work like that. Airbrush, sure, maybe dry brush a little bit of acrylic over it, but spray paint tends to absorb into the foam and make it brittle if you don't use Plasti Dip or something to seal it first. Alright, I just finished sealing it, and I didn't use Plasti Dip this time. I was going to, but I didn't. What I ended up using was just a brush and some Mod Podge, and I only put one coat on this, but I actually bought some higher quality foam than the usual stuff that I buy. I think this is turning out pretty good so far. Next I'm going to primer it, but I'm going to let this dry first and see if I'm going to need a second coat or not. Alright, now that my sealant has had plenty of time to dry, I'm going to go ahead and airbrush this black. So I just went ahead and airbrushed some yellow off camera. Now I did this because I don't have a proper mannequin head, and you probably noticed in the last clip, it keeps spinning around as the pressure from the airbrush nozzle hits it. So I did this off camera, and originally I was going to do the gray and black, but with the shape of all this, I just felt like I had to do the yellow. Okay, so I took my Dremel, and I didn't necessarily have to wait till the end, but I did. And I ground down one side so I could glue a piece of strap-on with the sticky Velcro on the other. And I ground down the other side so that I could put in some of the soft stuff for the Velcro to attach to. Okay, and I've gone ahead and glued in my strap with my Velcro and contact cemented in the soft side. That way, whenever I Velcro it, it won't have as much of a bump underneath and should hopefully fit more flush. That was the whole point of using the Dremel, to sand that down first. Okay, so you can see from that there, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. But watching that previous clip a couple times, I'm kind of unsure as to whether or not I want to put some sheer white fabric in for the eyes or not. But either way, I'm just going to go ahead and call this finished for now. Okay, so that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. Hopefully you all enjoyed it, and maybe it inspired you and gave you some ideas for your own projects. And as always, I want to thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it, and have a great day.